Hello, Laura Weigel here again today, of course with the Will to Wild Jewelry, and I wanted to open up a discussion or expand upon my video yesterday about shadow work. I received so many messages, which was kind of cool, about what shadow work is. So it's definitely a topic that we need to discuss. In my opinion, it is where the work really begins. It's something I've been working on for years, and of course in spurts. Sometimes when you're going through a lot, especially, my a lot, I always go back to Will's accident because that was like the big life shakeup for me personally. And I know during that, I was not able to do any type of shadow work. But when you have little life hiccups, or even when you're in a good place, shadow work is really good to do. And what it basically means is it's like the unconscious, the unseen parts of our personality. And it stems from Jung psychology, which we talked about. I know I did a lot in my psych classes in college. So you're probably familiar with Jung psychology, but that's where shadow work stemmed from. It's basically the darker side, and it's the darker side of ourselves. And we're very resistant to our shadow side because we've labeled it as bad, right? It can be feelings of anger, jealousy, greed. I wrote down some so that I would remember. But anger, jealousy, greed, any of those feelings that we're very resistant to. And to kind of put it in an example of, since it's unconscious, right? Since it's the part of ourselves that we don't see, how do we access that? And yesterday I gave you some crystals to use to access that. Another way to access that, which you might have heard of, is like the mirror work, right? So whatever triggers you the most in another person is something that you have to look at in yourself, whatever you resist the most. An example of that might be, you might, for example, be very, very triggered by people that are rude. That might really trigger you. And you might have a friend that isn't triggered in the same way by rude people. So there's something in you. There's something inside of you that is your shadow to really work on, or to look at even, right? Because first we just need to see it. I know actually I am very triggered by rude people. And I do know that when I'm not in a good place, I can be, in my mind, I always thought I was just kind of short or to the point, and in my mind I would tell a story like, well, I don't really feel like talking right now. Can't they really see that? But it was coming across as very rude. So that example is global and personal, and I can definitely see that. Because our shadow side also can help to stimulate us, right? It can help to provoke us to do better in certain areas, as long as we can see it and not judge it. So what was I saying? Envy, greed, selfishness is another one. Rage, desire, striving for power. And sometimes that can be the intention behind things, but if we see that, then we have a way to reshape that so that the intention can be a good thing, right? Like, if the shadow side intention is for power, and then we reshape that, well, what is it that I actually want the power for? What am I actually going to use the power for? Then we reframe it into something positive. So hopefully I'm explaining that well. Just a recap for yesterday, and I added another. So the crystals that I gave for the shadow work, the first one that I think that is the most important is the Labradorite. Because the Labradorite, it brings forth, that's really its main function, is bringing forth the subconscious to the conscious for us to reflect on, for us to see. We can't really heal what we don't see. So Labradorite, and I'm trying to make it so you can see these beautiful reflections. Okay, Selenite as well. Selenite, if you're using them in multiple stones, I would almost use this one first because it's for like cleansing. It's cleansing. And this is going to really make sense when I give you some tips on working with the shadow work. Next is opening our heart. Opening our heart specifically like to compassion, so that we can take a look at our shadow side, but just like we would with a child, like if I were working with my child and I saw behaviors of selfishness, I wouldn't shame her. We would teach her. It would be more of a teachable moment. And I want you to be able to do that with yourself, because if you shame yourself, then you're just adding more to it. Because mainly that's where these shadow sides kind of come up, is from stuffing our feelings as a child, because we've been shamed or we haven't been able to fully express ourselves. And when we were, we may have been condemned or shamed, as I was saying. So that can also be where some of this comes from. Or just even receiving disapproval as a child. You know, when you would try to speak up, getting those disapproving looks, and then you go back to process and it's like, okay, so I can't really express myself that way. How can I re-express myself? So you just start to kind of shift parts of yourself. Okay, so some of the ways to figure out what your shadow side is, since as I was saying, it is unconscious. It's below the surface. It means it takes a little bit of digging. It's going to take a little bit of work to discover those. So you want to start by just centering yourself and calming that monkey brain and stop with the thinking, right? We want to dive in a little bit deeper to ourselves, to the spirit, to the underlying self that is, right? Because we're not all of this. This is just our personality. This is just the way we present ourselves to the world. And to calm ourselves, you can find whatever works for you. It could be meditation. It could be doing some breath work, which I've been finding a lot of benefit in lately, and some movement, you know, kind of like moving the energy to get that nervous energy out. Which going for a walk, some yoga, but really taking the time to center yourself before you're going to do the shadow work. And then next is to treat yourself, as I was saying earlier. Let me back up a minute. So if we're going to start by centering ourselves, that's where the selenite could come in. This is where we could kind of cleanse our mind of these thoughts. We could meditate with the selenite. And honestly, with the labradorite too. Okay, so number 2 is where you're going to treat yourself with compassion. You're going to take a look at this with compassion and start to really look at these patterns, but with compassion. So what I suggest for this is doing some mantra work with yourself or some mirror work. If it feels uncomfortable, then that means it's probably something that would benefit you. We seem to resist doing what's going to really bring some stuff out. So mirror work might be, you know, literally looking in the mirror and saying these mantras to yourself. And one I love is, I love and accept myself. I love and accept myself. It sounds really easy in the beginning, and we can say it very fly-by-night. Yes, I love and accept myself. I love and accept myself. But if you can really look into your eyes, and then deeper, and then deeper, and then at the soul level, and really feel the love and acceptance of yourself, that you're going to love and accept yourself through the good and through the shadow side, right? I think that will help bring you deeper into your heart space. Next would be to journal. I think journaling will help a lot. And this doesn't, when I'm saying next, it doesn't have to go in that specific order. They can be interchangeable as you're doing it. But journaling what's coming up for you. Journaling specifically triggers that you see in your life, or certain personality traits that trigger you, and you are going to resist them. Trust me, you will, because I know the type of personality that triggers me. I am so resistant to it. You know, I don't want anything to do with it. But it doesn't have to be the whole part of it. Like, sit with it. What is it about it? What part, what piece of it can you identify with? And this brings me to number 4, about being radically honest with yourself. So I hope this answers some questions. I hope this intrigues you a little bit more about doing some of this shadow work, because I promise you it is so rewarding to see those parts of yourself, to love and accept those parts of yourself. And when they come up, treating them more with gentleness rather than condemning yourself, and to keep shaming yourself and to keep pushing them down. Okay, until next time, bye.